it's an honor. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks a lot. And thanks for your grotto support. We've received a grant before from you all, and in fact have applied for another one. So you guys are supportive. And I saw Andy Zellner's on here, and he's been caving in Huautla. I know, not at the same time I was one time, but a lot of people have been there. Are we ready to go?
Yes, we are. Bill, it's your show.
So we're gonna share screen here, I take it. All right,
Yep.
there you go. Okay. Okay. Looks like that worked. So I'm going to talk about this year's expedition. And you may notice there that I've got a 4-digit NSS number. And you may wonder why I'm still alive if that's the case. Well, reason is I joined the NSS about 6 weeks after I turned 16 years of age in 1964. I was a sophomore in high school. And I've had some recognitions that I'm proud of. I'm a fellow and was awarded that when I was 27, I think, and a Lou Bicking Award for exploration when I was 28, and a certificate of merit for the project I'm going to talk about here tonight when I was about 40, and then an Arts and Letters Award, which I'm very proud of, about, I don't know, 8 years ago or so. So where we're going to go is southern Mexico. You see this, the state of Mexico toward the bottom of the screen where it says OAX. That's an abbreviation for Oaxaca. And I live about where the T in the word united is at the top of the screen. So from where I live near Dallas, Texas, it takes pretty much 4 days to drive there. And I'll talk more about the journey to get to Huautla. It could be done in 2, but we take 4 and don't kill ourselves. So, pardon me? Somebody say something. This is a chronology of the exploration of the caves there. This is half of a poster that we printed back in 2016. That's why the 2016 date's in the lower right. We've shot beyond that, obviously, but 1965, cavers from Austin got kind of scientific about where the deepest caves in the world might be if they're in the Americas, and they worked with a geology professor at the University of Texas at Austin and got scholarly about it and got a hold of aerial photographs and found that there was a mountain range in northern Oaxaca that had internal drainage, about 100 inches of rainfall a year, no surface streams, and a big canyon, deep canyon just to the south, as deep as the Grand Canyon is, where it probably the water in a cave system came back out surface, and that turned out to be the case. In 66, a couple of the entrances to what's now Sistema Huautla, which has 30 entrances now, by the way, same as Mammoth Cave, matter of fact. A couple of the entrances were found, and one named Sótano de San Agustin was entered, and then 67, 68, and so forth. That's with the Texans up through 68. And then there was a hiatus between 68 and 71 when the Army set up a roadblock and nobody was allowed in the area. That's a whole different subject. But the reason for that is Huautla, besides being known for these caves, is also known as where psilocybin mushrooms were discovered to be. And they've spread around the world since, but this is where they were originally found. And that was something that was a holdover from pre-Hispanic times, before the conquest by the Spanish. Then my generation, with some people that you've heard of, and I'll say more about in a minute, started going in 1976, well, including Jim Smith, who lives just south of Atlanta and is a very, very good friend of mine. And we've been going ever since. But you can see that we went steadily from 76 up through 94. Then there was other places to go, you know, other places in Mexico. I went on a couple of expeditions to China, a couple of expeditions to Cuba and elsewhere. But then we started things back up in earnest in 2013. I'll say more about that in a second. The first people that arrived in Huautla in the mid-60s. We're surprised that the road had just been completed all the way to the town of Huautla de Jimenez. And when they first arrived there, they couldn't hardly find anybody who spoke Spanish. They spoke Mazateco, which is an ancient language. And the people have been living in that area for at least a couple thousand years, and cave archaeology has shown that. But they finally found some Spanish speakers, and they found out, oh yeah, there's big caves right outside of town, right to the south. And they didn't make it out there till the next year. Now that's me in the maroon down jacket. This is 1977. The first year that I went there, I went 3 times, 3 expeditions that year, because we realized, oh my gosh, this thing is gonna go. And a lot of you remember the guy on the right in the white t-shirt. That's Richard Schreiber. And I met Richard at Ellison's Cave in early 1969 and was active with the exploration at Ellison's. And the first time I met Richard in March of 1969, he told me about Huautla. He had been there with the Canadians the year before, in 1968. Because the Texas cavers got in over their heads right away and realized when they got deeper in any cave in the United States and they were in thundering waterfalls, and they just weren't quite ready for that with their denim pants and denim jackets and no wool and so forth. They were getting cold and they were getting beat up by waterfalls, so they kind of backed off. And Richard was one of the best cavers in the country, and he got involved with the Canadians, and then they quit going in 1971, and we picked it up in 76. The guy with a blue sweater on with a stripe across the chest is Bill Stone, and Bill and I started organizing expeditions in 77 and worked together steadily all the way up through, 94 really, so about 17, 18 years. And something else I'm proud about in this photo expresses it, is that until about now, about 77, when this picture was taken, women just weren't involved in super deep caving, just weren't doing it. And we included them. And the 2 women at the bottom of this picture, Dino Lowry and Jean Jansowitz, they both went over 1,000 meters deep in Huautla, and they were the first women to go that deep in any cave in the world. And the woman with the blue jacket in the middle is Patty Mathis, who's lived in Ecuador for a long time now, and she's one of the top volcanologists in the world. The woman on the far left is Julia James from Australia, and she's been the president of the International Congress of Speleology before, not that long ago. So there's been 2 books, as Mickey mentioned, or she said I wrote a couple, but the one on the left is Beyond the Deep, written primarily by Bill Stone, but with a couple of other authors, Barbara M. Indy and a professional writer named Monty Paulson. I teased Stone about the subtitle of this book, where it says The Deadly Descent into the World's Most Treacherous Cave. Because I said, isn't that the kind of thing you ought to tell your friends? I thought these caves seemed kind of friendly to me, not treacherous. Good grief. When did you figure that out? And he kind of droops his head a little bit and says, give me a break. That was what the publishers did to me. You know, I didn't know they were going to do that until the book came out. And then my book, Huautla, 30 Years in One of the World's Deepest Caves. And those 30 years were from 77 to 2007. And that book's kind of autobiographical about the expeditions that I was on. But I was on all the main ones during that 30-year span. Oops. Something I'm real proud of is that we've been invited to contribute a chapter to all 3 editions of the Encyclopedia of Caves. So this is peer-reviewed and academic, and this shows the cover of the 2nd edition. A 3rd edition came out just a few years ago, I think in 2019. And Jim Smith and I co-wrote the chapters for the first 2 editions, and then Tommy Shiflett and I wrote the chapter for the 3rd edition. And it was kind of cool when Will White, famous cave geologist up at Penn State, when he invited us to contribute to the 3rd edition, he said, don't feel constrained to the number of pages you've had in the first 2. So we added a little bit. So I didn't go to Huautla. Sorry about that. I didn't go to Huautla from 2007 until I returned in 2013, and that was with the British. I was contacted in 2011 by Chris Jewell, who top cave diver in the world, one of the guys that rescued the Thai soccer team, and is in the movies, if you saw him, about that. And he wanted all the information I could give him, rope links, who to take as a translator, who to rent houses from, you name it, how you get permission to go in the Sótano de San Agustín entrance of Sistema Huautla, and they wanted to dive the resurgence at the bottom. So they wanted to go 860 meters deep and carry on beyond where the 94 expedition that Bill Stone led had gone, because they'd reached a second sump. The first sump was about 1,250 feet long and it went 200 feet deep. Then there was a second sump and that hadn't been explored very far into it. So the Brits went in 2013. They rigged the Sótano de San Agustín entrance. They went 700 meters deep and camped in this great big room. And you can see in the lower right, people in that camp, which is called two things. It's called Camp 3 in that section of Sistema Huautla, and it's also called Stonehenge. And the reason it's called that is because there's these big flat rocks, flagstone type rocks, and people have built a circle of thrones there, sitting around the camp with a flat top table in the middle. And we joked for a long time about how 1,000 years from now, archaeologists would re-find this camp and wonder why kings went so deep in a cave to have meetings sitting in thrones in a circle. This is the destination for the British. This is Sump 9 at the bottom of Sistema Huautla. Bill Stone and Barbara M. Mindy reached this in 1994 when the two of them camped beyond the long sump. And they went through the second sump and explored beyond that and reached this very wide, deep sump, which has also been called the mother of all sumps. So this was the destination for the Brits in 2013. And Tommy Shiflett and I had supplied them with the information they needed. So we asked if we could go along for a couple of weeks of their expedition and check a lead in the route that they were going to rig. The first route down the Sótano de San Agustín route into Sistema Huautla, we had a lead and we'd been thinking about for years. Both of us had noticed, so we joined them. We had helped them to set up their expedition, so we went with them. This is the first diver really armed for bear. This is Jason Mallison diving into the sump at the bottom, and he's also one of the Brits that rescued the Thai soccer team in 2018. So after Tommy and I, that's Tommy on the left and me on the right, after we were with them for a couple of weeks, we left. We just used 2 weeks of vacation, and this photo was taken in the restaurant in the airport in Oaxaca, and Tommy was flying back to Virginia where he lives, and I was flying back to Texas. And we sat there and we decided, you know, we really do like caving in Huautla. Let's restart this project. Let's do it right. Let's do full speleology. So sitting right there at that table on a napkin, like they say Willie Nelson writes songs, we gave a name to the project of Proyecto Espeleológico Sistema Huautla, which means the Sistema Huautla Speleological Project, or PESH as an acronym. And these are the goals we set there and came up with, that we would conduct month-long expeditions the month of April for 10 years, 2014 through 2023. Well, we did not have expeditions in 2020 and 2021 because of COVID. So we picked them up again this year, and we've got 3 to go. We've done 7. And we wouldn't just explore and map the cave, we'd conduct full speleology. I've been active with the Cave Research Foundation at Mammoth Cave since I was in college in the late 60s. I'm going back for the expedition between Christmas and New Year's, and we kind of modeled PESH after what they do there. All of the studies you can do while you're there. And you can see geology, biology, paleontology, archaeology, and so forth. And there's been master's degrees written, the theses have been written on almost all of those subjects. And we're just now beginning to get into paleoclimatology, which I'll tell you more about in a few minutes, and folklore, because we've got a young lady who's from Huautla that is collecting the stories that have been told for centuries about the caves that the people there live around. We would support Mexican cave scientists, and we have in biology and geology and now paleontology. And by support. They pay no fees to come on expedition, and we will collect data for them, and we'll even teach them how to be cavers if they're interested. Excellence in photography. A couple of our best photographers are from TAG, and that's Chris Higgins and Matt Tomlinson, who coincidentally both are from Knoxville. And then we set a goal of extending the length of Sistema Huautla from the 65 kilometers or 40 miles that it was in 2013 to 62 miles or 100 kilometers. And we reached that goal this year. We surpassed 100 kilometers in length just this year in 2022. And the depth, we're at 1560 now, which is, as you can see, 5,118 feet deep. And I changed this slide today because I looked on Caver Bob, may he rest in peace, Bob Golden's lists or deepest caves in the world, and Huautla had been bumped from 9th deepest to 10th. It's actually tied to the meter, in fact, to the 10th of a meter, according to Bob's list, with a cave in Austria. So the routine that we're in, having done 7 expeditions now, PESH expeditions, is to be ready to go at the end of March, have a party in Austin. Austin's kind of a caver hub, and it's been the launching location for expeditions to Mexico for more than 50 years. And I happen to have an adult daughter that lives there, and it's got a nice big deck in her backyard, and is willing to host a party. So this is end of March this year. That's the back of me, my big sombrero. And I'm talking about objectives of the expedition. And we had a good turnout of cavers from Texas. We had a band playing in the house the whole evening, and even had a couple of the old timers. That's John Kreidler on the left, who was on the first trip to Huautla in 1965. He had just turned 17 years old, but he knew Bill Russell, who a lot of you have probably heard of, was sort of the father of Texas caving. I mean, well, Texas and Mexico caving. And that's Bob Burnett on the right. Rooney, he's known as Rooney Burnett, comes to NSS conventions. And Rooney was the first person to enter one of the entrances of what is now Sistema Huautla. And he's about 80 years old now, maybe even 81. So they spoke and told a story about their first trips there during this party. The next morning, we loaded up 3 vehicles, and it doesn't really matter what time of day we get out of Austin on that Sunday, the last Sunday in March. We're just going to go to Laredo, which is about a 4.5 hour drive from Austin. And we'll get down to Laredo and get a hotel room close to the border, and then early the next morning cross the border when the border guards are still in a good mood. Nobody's given them a problem yet, and hopefully not have to unload the vehicles. We haven't yet had to, but you never know. And then that's the big day of driving. That Monday is about a 12-hour drive to within about 150 miles of Mexico City, north of Mexico City. We got a favorite hotel right along the highway that we stay in, and it's nice and safe and comfortable. And then the next day we'll make it all the way to Huautla. This year we had vehicle problems. We had 3 vehicles, all 3 of them needed mechanical work on the way down. But at least the last 2 that needed mechanical work, we didn't realize it till we got to Tehuacan, Puebla, and Tehuacan's the last town of any size before we drive up into the mountains where Huautla is. And we got a mechanic there that is really good, very affordable, and he will work all night long. So we took the vehicles by at 10 o'clock at night. He said, I'll text you when they're done, but that's going to be in the wee hours of the morning. And I'm just going to tell you they're done. And when you wake up in the morning, look for that text and come over at 8 o'clock and pick them up. And that's exactly what happened. He and a buddy worked all night long, and we went by at 8 o'clock in the morning and picked the vehicles up and made it on to Huautla. So we were only delayed 1 day on the way down by mechanical issues. Huautla is so different than when I went there the first time in 1977. Then it was a muddy road all the way there, from pavement, which was about 50 miles away. And the streets of Huautla were muddy, and the only way you could communicate with the outside world was go to a long distance office and sit in a line of chairs and have the long distance office person in the office make a call for you, and it had to be collect. But now it's just as modern as can be. The road to Watla is paved. There's about 45,000 people in the town. There's 4G cellular. There's good hotels. There's good restaurants, and it's really modernized in the 45 years since I went there the first time. So we are friends with local government. The guy in the middle of the picture is the #2 guy with the municipio, which is the local government there. It's pretty much the government of the whole mountain range. We normally meet with the presidente, the #1 guy, but he was away in the capital city of the state of Oaxaca. And so the #2 guy was willing to meet with us even at night and welcome us back. And we always bring some publications for them. And if there's any kind of challenge to cave access, they're always glad to help us out. So beyond Watla, about 12 miles away, is this little village. And this is where we've been staying the last 6 years. This is the village of Plan Carlota. There's 2 entrances to the system, about 9/10 of a mile up the road that's at the bottom of the screen. And people are really friendly here, and we're able to rent several buildings, and it's quiet, and it's really worked out very well. Now, to our chagrin, though, when we arrived this year, see, I'd gone in February with 3 other people because we hadn't been since 2019 because of COVID. So just needed to touch base with the people we rent houses from, and we rent a room there for equipment and just make sure everything was okay. And had food gone bad or what that we stored there. So we were told when we were there in February that the second story of this building would be finished by April. Well, it wasn't. So that threw us a little bit of a curve, but we made do. And we unpacked the trucks. And then over the next couple of days, we set up a cookhouse. You can see our logo back there, Sistema Watla. Proyecto Espeleológico Sistema Watla. That yellow pad is keeping track of who's in the cave and where. On rope 1 banner, the flag of the Explorers Club. I'm a member, as is Jim Smith, and Bill Stone is, but he wasn't on this expedition. But we're equipped to feed up to 30 people in this room, and this is the community room. And we've had the luxury of the same chef, Vico Jones from Austin, for 6 expeditions. And Vico is not a cook. Vico is a chef, and he's also our #1 diplomat. Vico is from San Luis Potosí in Mexico originally, but he's lived in Austin for 22 years and married a Texas gal and has kids there. But he's been coming on our expeditions, and I don't know of anybody else that would sleep in the kitchen like he does, so that he'll wake up when cavers come in at all hours of the night and hop out of bed and get the stove going and cook them a hot meal. That's just a wonderful contribution to the project. We rent 3 buildings for sleeping like this. Now, when people ask me, well, what are the sleeping accommodations? And I say a really nice spot on a concrete floor. So bring good pads. You need to get good night's sleep to go caving like we do there. So they do, works out really well. And we had sent out prior to the expedition, Tommy Shiflett and I, the co-leaders of PESH, our ideas about who would be team leaders and who would be on teams. And if anybody had any ideas of their own, then we welcome them to speak up and we'd make some adjustments. But you can see there that Kyle Lassiter from Tennessee was the team lead for a team going to Blowhard Boulevard. Now, about Blowhard Boulevard, that had been discovered in 2019. That was a really good lead. It was very far into the system, the La Grieta section of Sistema Watla. They were going to camp at Camp 2, which is 500 meters deep. And Blowhard Boulevard was named after the late Lee White, and it was named by Lee White because he realized that he was a blowhard. And we love that about him, that he never shut the heck up. So Blowhard Boulevard was a top lead for the Kyle Lassiter team. And then you can see other objectives, which don't mean much to you. We name caves after in Mazatec if we can. If the local people have a name already, we'll use that. Like La Grieta means the fissure in Spanish. Nita Nashi is in Mazateco, and that means headwall cave. Nita He is Mazateco, and that means deep cave. And that's what they call them. So once everybody was there, first day of April, we had our first team meeting. I had made notes as I thought of things for a month on my iPhone, and that was my agenda. And I presided, but with Tommy Shiflett as number 2 presiding person. And you can see him on the left with his hands out. He's talking about survey procedures here to make sure everybody understands what we'd like. Don't take the notes home with you and that kind of thing, and write a trip report. So this was a 2 or 3 hour meeting, and everybody had made it. We had people from different countries, mostly from the United States, but also from Mexico and England and Wales and Ireland and Australia and Canada and so forth, but mostly from the USA. So started out right away packing underground food. We use a formula a recipe, that they came up with at Cheve. Pretty tasty, but high in nutrition, and not freeze dried, but dehydrated, that you can buy in bulk. That's my daughter Audrey, who's been going to Huautla since she was about 6 years old, I believe, and now she's a mom with several kids and loves to come down and just help as much as she can, but she's capable of caving too. This is the gear room that we rent there, and it's nice and secure, and we pay rent year-round for it. Very reasonable, but we're able to store things. In the early days of PESH, we were hauling everything back to Texas, and I would fill my garage with it, and then it would take me about 2 months to inventory everything and find a place to stick it. And then we haul it back down there, and we realized, God, that's a lot of unnecessary work when we can just devote half a day of the expedition to inventorying everything and then store it there. So we've done that now for about 5 years. We have a computer room, and you can see that Quaker Oats box says survey book pages with some minor instructions I hold together with paper clips in box and so on. And I check that every day as expedition leader. I check that every day. When I know people have come out of the cave the day before, I look to make darn sure the survey pages are in there. And then we got this project-owned Dell computer there that we use for plotting the data. In the back is a voltage regulator, and we can charge a lot of batteries at the same time out of one outlet with that. So that's been really important to what we're doing, because the electrical service there ain't so great, so to speak. This is our first group shot. See, we're there. I'm retired from a career, and I can get away for 5.5 weeks. We're there in the expedition. The caving part of the expedition lasts 4 weeks. So most people with good jobs or jobs at all can get 2 weeks of vacation. So we accommodate them. Which 2 weeks you want, the first 2 weeks or the last 2 weeks. Now, a lot of people can come, or some people can come for a whole month. A lot of people can only come for 2 weeks. So we have a turnover weekend in the middle of the expedition. This is the first group, and you can see we're all in identical t-shirts, and that was a donation from Elevated Climbing, Mike Green out of Chattanooga. So I speak highly of them. They were generous and gave us all t-shirts. And then this is how we keep track of who's in the cave, when they went in, what their destination was, when they're estimated out, and then when they came out. And when you got 5 different underground camps, you sure don't want to just try to remember this kind of thing. So this is a topographic map of the Sierra Mazatecas. In yellow is the city of Huautla, and then immediately to the east of that in purple is Sistema Huautla. So you can see that it's close to the city of Huautla. It's less than a half-hour drive to the closest entrances. And up at the top of the screen, very top of the screen, I'm going to move the cursor up there, right up there. It says, I think right over in here, it says Plan de Escoba. It's somewhere there. Anyway, that's now where we've got some entrances that we're very excited about, because we got a dye trace into Sistema Huautla, and we're hoping to open up this whole northwest quadrant of the system, because this is all internal drainage and there's big sinks up there. So we're bound to find a way into that. In fact, we think we found the way into that. So this is 100 kilometers of cave right here that I'm circling. And then the water in Sistema Huautla comes out down here in this deep canyon in the Rio Santo Domingo. And this is a cave diving cave, and it's been done by a group that's been diving in the different resurgences along this river. And then this is another cave that's nearby. Bill Stone did an expedition of this cave back in 1984. It's called Peña Colorada. And we believe this is an overflow of Sistema Huautla. In other words, when it floods during the rainy season, that's when water comes out this cave. And it goes to a series of sumps, and there's still a lead at the back, but it's like sump 7. So it's quite a challenge to get back there. And you got to camp beyond sumps back there. Now to the north of Plan de Escoba, that's the edge of the Sistema Huautla karst drainage basin at Plan de Escoba, and to the north it drops off into another drainage, which Australians and Mexican cavers have been working on for a number of years. They got a whole bunch of pits out in there, and they got a cave that's I think it's about 7 or 8 kilometers long, so about 5 miles. We don't think that it's going to have any kind of connection to Sistema Huautla. It just doesn't look like it will. It's separate drainage off to the north, but this is looking from the houses we rent out at Plan de Escoba. We've had 2 surface base camps. So this year we had a surface base camp at Plan Carlota that I showed you originally, with that house that we set up the kitchen in, but this was a separate camp where we had people the entire expedition and working on entrances that were found back in 2019. And we had communications by way of Wi-Fi in both places, which was a real surprise, because they weren't equipped with Wi-Fi when we were there in 2019, but in 3 years' time, they had Wi-Fi in both villages. So we were able to communicate very well. This cave was found in 2019. It was named by Riley Blackwell, who a lot of you probably know. She and Elliot Stahl found this entrance and named it Cueva Elysium. Elysium was sort of the Valhalla, the heaven for the Greeks, and it's very, very heavenly, beautiful, beautiful entrance and a beautiful cave. And this has been pushed now for 2 expeditions, and I'll tell you more about it in a minute. It's got some big chambers in it. At present, after 2 expeditions, it's 400 meters deep and 7 kilometers long, or about 5 miles long, and got some really nice big chambers, incredible formations. I got Dave Bennell coming this next April to try his hand at photography in the formation section of this cave. But as you can see, it's just gorgeous, breathtaking. In fact, on the inside front cover of the November NSS News was a woman from San Antonio, Dr. Mio Catano. She's a physician, and she was standing in this very spot that Oscar Barones is standing in for this picture. So look at your NSS News from November, and you'll see the same spot. The NSS News of February 2020 had this cover shot, and that's Fernando Hernandez, who's from Mexico, and he got his master's at Western Kentucky University and did his thesis on the geochemistry of Sistema Huautla. The real definitive hydrogeology study of Sistema Huautla was done about 30 years ago by Jim Smith, and he also got his master's at Western Kentucky. So Fernando did a dye trace from this new cave, from Cueva Elysium, and got a positive to deep in Sistema Huautla. So we're really hoping that we can find a human way through there, and that should open up that, like I said before, that whole northwestern quadrant of the karst drainage basin. Montserrat Peralta Mendez. She is incredibly valuable to our project. Montserrat came by and visited us in 2018, and she's local. She hadn't ever visited us before because she'd been away to Tehuacan to college. She graduated from law school last summer, but we met her in 2018 while she was still in law school. She came by the expedition, didn't speak a word of English, but she decided upon meeting cavers that she was going to learn to speak English. She's fluent in Mazateco. It was her first language, the indigenous language. She tells me that there's 200,000 Mazatec speakers in the Sierra Mazateca, but of those 200,000, only about 20 can read and write Mazatec, and she's one of those 20. She's real scholarly, and she gave a presentation up in Rapid City this last summer in the Culture of Cavers session on the folklore, the stories that she's been finding from her grandparents and her aunts and uncles, and anybody else that's got a story to tell, she'll record them. But how'd she learn English? She learned English on the internet. There was nobody in Huautla teaching English. So she watched the Kardashians and Jimmy Fallon reruns. And sometimes I laugh when she comes out with, she'll say, yeah, sure, which apparently Kim Kardashian says. She's almost got me saying it. But Monse is very valuable. She's a diplomat. And here we are with a guy that owned Nita Nashi, that entrance, who was going to charge us a lot of money to go back in there this year. And we had some refurbished laptop computers donated by a caver friend in Austin, and Microsoft Word is in Spanish on them. And we said, well, hey, instead of that money you want from us, how about a laptop? How about that? Your kids and your grandkids can use that. So here he is looking at it suspiciously, like he didn't know how to turn it on, But it was really funny. Right after this picture was taken, his grandson walked up, and man, he knew everything about it. He was whipping around on it, opening all kinds of stuff. He was really excited that we had some games on there. So Montserrat is just extremely valuable to our project, and she may even be on here right now. I told her about this presentation. So first week of caving, cavers started going in, and 5 different places to camp underground. This group was going in the La Grieta section. They were actually going way far in to what we call Camp 3, which can take as long as 15, even up to 17 hours to reach through a lot of cave. You go 400 meters deep, and then you start going up slope, and you go about 300 meters in elevation back up. So you're doing 700 meters of vertical work just down and then back up to get out to that remote underground camp. This is the entrance of La Grieta, the 200-foot free fall drop. And then this is Kyle Lassiter's team. I dropped off with a van that our project owns, and they went in what's called the Sótano del Agua de Carrizo entrance. That's a 640-meter deep cave that we did back in the late 70s that we started revisiting just a few years ago, and started working off the bottom of this deep pit. This is actually named the Tag Shaft because this was found back in the 80s by cavers from Tag, including the late Jim Yeomans and Frank Bogle, and I don't remember who else, but it's as deep as Surprise Pit is. It's about 430 feet deep. Most of it free fall, and then off the bottom of this there's a tight squeeze, and then there's a stair stepping shaft series that comes out into Sistema Huautla at about 500 meters of depth, and that's where Camp 2 is. So we had 5 different underground camps happening at the same time, and I was on the surface hoping everything's going well, and working with Monse and Vico to go see other cave motors, to have plenty of caving for people that had come from afar to cave hard for a month. Sorry. And after about a week and a half, cavers started coming out all hours. You just don't know, approximately when they plan to come out, and they try to hit that mark, but they might come out a day early or maybe a day late, and we don't get alarmed. We give them a day grace. But we heard tales of lots of passage found and surprises and disappointments, and some really cool areas had been discovered, and survey notes were laid out just to kind of improve upon them if they need that. And then other people that were camping underground came out and had taken some really cool pictures of formations. And this is the entrance of Nitanashi when this group came out after about almost 2 weeks camping underground. But the big discovery was a big surprise. And I told you before about Blowhard Boulevard. That fizzled. That didn't go. There were rocks in the way. It was blocked. And that was the first trip out of camp, Kyle Lassiter's team. So they're back in camp. They got food for 7 days, maybe 10 days. And their main lead just fizzled. So what are they going to do? Well, Kyle remembered a lead that was about 5 minutes from camp that had been noticed back in 1977. I might even have kept book back then. I don't know. But one of us had marked that there was a side lead with a stream coming in. So they checked that out. And did it ever go? It was the big discovery of the expedition. Surprise, surprise. They named it Camino Oxidado, which means rusty roof. It's got a red colored roof throughout a lot of it. But it was like that. I mean, it just went and went. And we still got leads up there. So in April of next year, we're going to put a team in there right off because there's still leads. And they even did a camp way up this passage. So mid-expedition, before people left and before new people arrived, we had a group meeting. We were eating outside because of COVID, because the last thing in the world we want to do is take it to the people there. And we actually had a COVID-free expedition this year. Now, we required that everybody be vaccinated, and they were. And we wore a mask when we were in town, like most people in Wildwood do. They're conscientious about that. So this is me talking about the successes of the expedition so far after 2 weeks. And then the next day, people left, other people arrived, and we took our second group photo of the expedition. So this is second half and the plan, and you can see that we switched people around a little bit upon their request, but we had leads that were going, so we put teams there camping underground. Now, we had a mishap. And one of the things that we cover and stress during our team meeting at the beginning of the expedition and then the team meeting at the middle of the expedition is safety, of course. And something I always say is the last thing we want to hear is somebody say, you know, I saw that coming. Well, we had an incident where somebody should have seen it coming because they saw that rigging was bad. And then when somebody needed to trust a traverse and actually shock loaded it, it gave. And they took a slight fall and broke their ankle, but sprained it badly. Well, that's not this. What I'm showing on the screen now was something that's real hard to avoid. And that was the guy on the right from Mexico, Cuate Sanchez, got terribly sick while he was 600 meters deep. He was one of the first to get a bad stomach bug, that a norovirus, which I ended up getting. The last couple of weeks of expedition, I had a stomach of steel, if you know what I mean. And I usually don't get sick in Mexico, but I did. And I couldn't hardly get out of bed for a couple of days. I had diarrhea and vomiting and was just drained of energy. Well, I was on the surface. He had that hit him 600 meters deep. And Peter Barry from Ireland, he's a fast guy on ropes. He climbed all the way out of the cave, hiked down to Plan Carlota, found me, said, we got a guy 600 meters deep. We got to assist him. And the first thing I did was called to the other surface camp and asked for Bob Alderson from Virginia and Oscar Barones, who I knew the way to where he was. And I said, I don't care how tired you are. I don't care when you came out of the cave from camping, get in there and get him out. Because I've always said a self-rescue isn't even a rescue. It's an inconvenience. Just get him out of there. And as soon as they left to go in the cave to take him a stove and food and a lot of encouragement to climb out from 600 meters deep, then we got prepared for a rescue with scad litter and pulleys and so forth. And he got himself out. So it's had a good ending. So more camps underground. You can see we're up to about the 17th, 18th of April here. And the last day of caving was on 29th. Now, science, cave science. We've done biological collections in wildlists for 40 years, and we do it by permit from the agency that handles such things with the Mexican government. So what you see here is the collecting permit from a top biologist with the top university in Mexico, UNAM. And so we had official permission, and then those specimens that we bring out and go to these biologists, they publish the papers. They're happy with us because they've had a lot of papers that they published. And in fact, this is one of the most recent ones. This was written primarily by Dr. Oscar Franke. If any of you were at the NSS convention in Montana in 2018, I think that was, Oscar was awarded the honorary member award of the NSS. That's the second highest award in the NSS. And that was for having worked with cavers for 40 years and identifying the specimens that had been brought out. Now look at the last sentence at the bottom there. The last sentence of the abstract. It says Tama-Wala is one of the richest cave systems in the world. Originally, he was going to say that it has the most troglodytic life forms known of any cave in the world. And he told me he was going to say that in this paper. And I jumped the gun and I bragged about that on Facebook, and some caver from Croatia corrected me and said, no, we got a cave over here with more than that. And I told Oscar that, and he got in touch with that guy, and he found out the difference is that they've got a microbiologist who collects things you can't even see, you know. He collects things with paintbrushes. And then they look back in the lab to see if they got something. So yeah, okay, they got us beat there in number, but that's okay. Tama-Wala is one of the richest cave systems in the world biologically, and that's all right. We're safe saying that. Now this is one of the last teams to go underground, and that's Jeff Gobin on the left from Denver, and in the red cave suit that's Ethan Perrine from Austin, Texas, and oh God, let me think about it. I got Niles Lathrop with a black t-shirt on from California, but now he's in graduate school at Western Kentucky in Bowling Green. And then Jake on the right. I can't not thinking of his last name at the moment. But anyway, they were going deep in the system to Camp 3, and I grabbed Niles because he's a geology student. I said, Niles, this is the last push of the expedition. I've been asking people, please look for the best possible stalagmite sample that's already broken so that we can get off into paleoclimatology. And we got a scientist at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas who's the top in the field, one of the top in the field in the United States. He would love us to get a sample out because there's no paleoclimate data from this part of Mexico, and he'd like a meter high stalagmite, you know, about 15 centimeters in diameter at the base. I know it's going to be heavy, but get a broken one if you can, and you'll be a hero if you find it. Well, guess what? They found it. They found the perfect one. And that's it, back on the surface. Now, if you look, that's in 4 pieces. Look at that base. That base is like half of it. And that weighed 12 kilos. That's 25 pounds. Now, I don't know if y'all have heard of rocking packs, sneaking a rock into somebody's pack. You don't hear of rocking your own pack too much, but Niles Lathrop rocked his own pack with a 25-pound rock, and he carried it out. Now, look at the tip up there. The tip was small. It's like about 6 inches long. And when I got up in the morning and they'd come out of the cave, I was hoping they'd brought out a stalagmite, and they said, yeah, we did. Except the guy that brought out the tip came over to me and he asked me this question. He asked, how important is the tip? And I said, what are you saying? And he said, well, I guess I stopped to fill my Nalgene with water about 300 meters deep, and I must have set it down. And my answer was, that tip is important enough for you to recruit somebody and go get it. So he did. And they went and got it. Now, that's been sawed in half in the university lab in Las Vegas, and it's been analyzed. Whoops. So here's what Dr. Lassanet from that university said. What it boils down to is that the tip, it stopped growing 115,000 years ago, but it started growing 340,000 years ago. So there's about 210,000 years of growth. And what's really cool is in the last paragraph. And that is, that kind of blew my mind. It could be the Rosetta Stone for Mexico paleoclimatology studies, meaning this is the standard. And that is so cool, really cool. So this is a realm of speleology that we're just getting off into, but we got a heck of a good start here. Paleontology, we work with paleontologists who are with INA, which is the agency in Mexico that is over such studies. This is a Pleistocene sheep. They went extinct about 13,000 years ago. They're not like sheep today. They're about the size of a modern bull. And this is still in place. It's in situ in the cave and was identified by this photograph. Archaeology. There's been a master's thesis written on the archaeology of one of the caves in Huatla, and several caves have got ceramic vessels in them. But this particular one, this arm vessel, I apologize for no scale being in this shot, but it's about the size of Arnold Schwarzenegger's arm. It's big. It's bigger than mine. It's hollow. And we sent this picture to the head of archaeology for the state of Oaxaca, who's a friend of ours. He loves what we're doing. He loves that we keep him informed. And he said it's a unique ceramic. There's not another one known like it. And he believes it's a blood collector. Blood, human sacrifice, all that kind of thing was practiced as part of the religion of the day about 2,000 years ago. And as you probably know, was still being practiced by the Aztecs when the Spanish arrived in 1519. So my kind of things I dealt with, we almost ran out of water on the surface, even though part of the deal with our landlord was that he would supply water. But after about 3 weeks of expedition, he came to me and said, well, you know, I thought we'd have water. We had no water. It needs to rain for us to have more water. So I said, well, I saw this water hauling truck. Where's that from? Oh, it's in this other town. Well, I sent a couple of people down there to hire him to bring us 10,000 liters. And we became big heroes because we filled every container we had, and then we gave water away to our friends in the village. And that was a good deal. The guy behind the Mac computer there is the presidente of the municipio of the Huatla, the whole area, the whole mountains. That's David Garcia. And what he's seeing here is a drone video, and that's with a black mask on is Derek Bristol. I'm sure y'all are familiar with his caving videos on YouTube. You should be. They're great. And what we're doing here is showing him a water source for municipal water that they didn't know about. It's a surface stream that's kind of behind a hill where nobody lives. So there's nobody in the drainage basin. It runs into a cave and it's gone. And it runs year round. They didn't even know it was there. And it's not that far away. So we're helping them in a way they ask us to help. They asked if water could be gotten out of the caves. And we said, nah, they're too deep. The big reservoir of water we know about is 1,200 meters below the surface. It's not going to happen. You can't pump it out from there. But here's surface water. You can get it. So we did our part and we showed them this video. This entrance was noticed almost every day of the expedition. They cleared this sinkhole to grow corn in. And we kept saying, this picture was taken out of the van window. It was just right next to the road. You can see they're growing corn down in there, and it looked like there's an entrance down there. So finally, some people went down to look, and there was an old bolt, an old self-drive right at the entrance. So cavers had been in there, but probably back in the late 70s. And they lost the air, and they never even mapped anything and never even said anything. So people went in there this year, and on the last day of the expedition, they found where the air went, and they mapped up to a drop where they ran out of rope, this 25-meter pit right here. And what could they see beyond? Talk about a lead. Look at that. Canyon continues 50 meters tall by 5 meters wide with a gale of air. A pretty good lead, pretty good. Right on top of the 26th longest cave in the world and the deepest cave in the Americas. That's a good lead. It'll probably go down and connect somewhere. We don't know where. This is our storage room. We devoted the second half of the Thursday of the last week of the expedition to inventorying everything. And this is where we store things from one year to another. And then we packed up and loaded 3 vehicles for the drive back to Texas. We went into Huautla, into the city, to our favorite restaurant. And we had a private party there. And we had traditional Mazatec dishes as our food. And then at the end of the dinner, the farewell dinner, end of a successful expedition, everybody's safe and sound. We met a major goal of 100 kilometers in length. Everybody got to stand up and tell a story, a funny story, inspiring story, whatever they wanted to tell. And that was a good way to end the expedition. So here's a plan view map on the left. The upper reaches, the highest part of the system is to the north. And then the sump that the Brits dove is down here at the bottom, down here. This is a profile view, of course, showing the vertical extent of the system, and it's 5,000 feet of vertical extent. These are the participants of this year's expedition from 6 different countries, as you can see. And our sponsors, who for the most part give us discounts on purchases, but in some cases donate things like Austin nuts. Pretty much all the kinds of nuts we asked for, they donated, from walnuts to pecans to peanuts, you name it. And an NSS grant, Pigeon Mountain has been kind to us. One of the founders of Pigeon Mountain was Richard Schreiber, one of the founders of this project. So we've had a good relationship with Pigeon Mountain for a long time. And photo credits, map credit, Tommy Shiflett. And we do have a website if anybody is interested. And there's a gallery of some of our best photographs there. That's my presentation. And I'm glad to answer any questions if you got any.
Wow.
Bill, that was so great. Thank you so much.
Simply
Incredible.
My
Thank you.
pleasure.
Q&A time.
Wow.
Bill, that was awesome. I really appreciate all your time. You did a fantastic job. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Bill, I have a question
Okay.
about how much does an expedition down there cost in total?
Well, I applied for a grant with, I guess it was the NSS International Fund. Oh, also the National Speleological Foundation Grant Fund, and they asked for a budget. So our budget is $25,000. And that doesn't include people's transportation to there.
Mhm.
So they're on their own to get there. Most people fly. Now, $25,000 is mostly covered by the participants. So what the fee we charge, everybody pays a $100 gear fee, and that's also called a commitment fee, and that's done by, that's due by October 31st. And that's their commitment. That's not refundable. We're going to spend that right away, like in
Yeah.
November, on gear, rigging,
Yeah.
hardware, and so forth. And then the second fee is due on January 31st, and that's $25 a day that you're going to be on the expedition. That's food, rent, gasoline for driving around the mountains all the time, all those operational expenses. Now our budget does call for us to raise about $5,000 from donations and grants and gifts in kind, which is stuff like those peanuts being donated, things like that.
Yeah.
So I think that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, Bill, this is Andy.
These days,
Yeah, Andy Hunt.
are there a lot of actual Mexican residents and people from Mexico that are capable of helping out on these expeditions? I mean, do they have their own
Yeah,
resources?
yeah, sure. Well, one thing I didn't mention about Monse, that woman who is so instrumental to our successes these days, because she's from there. She's the first Mazatec, in other words, first person from Huautla ever in all these years has come up to us and said, I want to be a caver. I want to be able to do that. I'm going to learn how to do that. And she's learning. Now I mentioned Oscar Barones, that we had about 4 Mexican cavers with us this year. Now, one thing that has caused our number of Mexican cavers to decrease over the last few expeditions, 2 or 3 or 4 expeditions, is that Cheve's in full swing now. And Cheve is a different kind of cave. You know, I started working in Cheve myself back in the early 90s. And in fact, 2021, they had a National Geographic support. It was a free expedition for everybody. So that certainly was attractive, a whole lot better than our deal where you got to, pay to come. But we're open to any Mexican cavers that contact us. I would imagine, and recently I did the research to see, since the first people entered a Huautla cave in 1966, how many different people have contributed to the project. So I created a list of 384 names. Now that doesn't include people that might have dropped by and went caving for a day or two and left. That's not contributing to the project. But if they took photographs, or they helped survey, or they helped explore, or they helped with any of the studies, they're on that list, 384. And then my partner, Diana, asked me a question. She said, how many only came once? So I looked at that, and it turns out that 58% of them only came once out of 384. But that's a big number, but it's a long period of time since the first cavers went in a cave there in 1966. But we've had probably in the PESH years since the first expedition in 2014, off the top of my head, probably 12, maybe 15 cavers from Mexico that were perfectly capable of doing any of the deep caves. No problem at all. They knew what they were doing, but they cut their teeth somewhere else,
Hey, Bill, my name is Joel Rowe. I've got a couple of questions for you. One is this area around Huautla the most karst rich part of Mexico in general? And my second question is, could you tell us a little bit about the Explorers Club? Some of us are not very familiar with that. Just heard a few things.
Certainly. There's a lot of karst in Mexico, and the whole Yucatan Peninsula is karst, but it's also flat. And that's why the caves are primarily explored with scuba tanks. And in fact, it's expected that eventually the longest cave in the world is not going to be Mammoth. It's going to be the big one around Tulum and the eastern side of the Yucatan Peninsula. But the deepest caves in the Americas are right there along where Huautla is. Cheve is close to Huautla. It's just south of that canyon to the south. It's on the other side of that canyon. There's about, I don't know off the top of my head right now, probably about 5,000 meter deep caves now in Mexico. Huautla was the first one back in 1980. And now there's about 5, I think, maybe 6. I have to look, and they're all within 100 miles of each other, right up that same mountain range. That's a big uplifted thrust fold of thick limestones. That used to be under the Gulf of Mexico, look at Jim Smith's thesis, by the way, is online. You can find it. If you Google James Smith Huautla, you will find it. And anybody that's looked at it, read it, scanned it, wonders why it wasn't a PhD dissertation. It should have been. It's 400 pages long. It's in depth. Excellent work. Fernando Hernandez just added on to it. Now, Explorers Club. When I was a boy, my dad had a copy of the book Kon-Tiki in the house. In fact, see these books behind me? That copy of Kon-Tiki is over there. And it's got a picture in it. I don't know if you know that story, but that's about a anthropologist from, I think, Norway or Sweden, Scandinavia, whatever. His name's Thor Heyerdahl. He had this theory that Easter Island in the Pacific wasn't populated by Polynesians that crossed the Pacific. It was maybe populated by people from South America that might have built a raft and floated on currents over there. So he built a raft and floated to Easter Island. And there's a picture in there of the Explorers Club of Thor Heyerdahl and some famous polar explorer, Peter Fruchen, standing around this gigantic globe right inside the lobby of the Explorers Club in New York City. And I know as a boy, I looked at that picture countless times, wondering, how do you get to be one of them? How do you get to be an explorer? They haven't mentioned that at school. They talk about the explorers of the 14 and 1500s, not these days. And then, astronauts got going, and I started caving when Apollo was happening. And when I was a kid too, they used to cover the Explorers Club annual dinner in New York City when they eat these exotic foods, and there's a lot of daring. Would you try that? I mean, that's a goat penis. Would you eat that? Or and I did. That's a deep fried tarantula. Would you eat that? I'm not sure about that. You eat it first, kind of thing. And they used to cover that dinner in the newspaper, but they haven't in a long time. So I've had it in the back of my mind for a long time, ever since childhood, that I wanted to be an Explorers Club. But here's when I decided to join. At the 1978 NSS convention in New Braunfels, Texas, Bill Stone and I had already been to Watla 4 times. And we knew we had a major cave system. And we wanted to do not just exploration and mapping, but speleology, all the studies you can do while you're in the cave. And, we hadn't started careers or anything yet. How do you get going with that? So we invited Russell Gurney to lunch, and Russ had been the president of the NSS and both that and the Explorers Club. He'd been the president of both. And we took him to lunch for a hamburger in New Braunfels, Texas. And he said this, he said, join the Explorers Club. I'll sponsor you, and it gives you credibility to build on. So we did. Stone and I joined at the same time and the same sponsors in 1979. And I just went over the weekend to Galveston, Texas, to a Texas chapter of the Explorers Club event. And we had a retired NASA astronaut as a speaker, and he spent 6 months in the International Space Station. It was just incredibly interesting talk. So I love the events, and I've been to ECAD, the Explorers Club annual dinner in New York City, I don't know, about 5 times. It's expensive, but I save up and go. And I don't know if you've seen the movie Sanctum, the caving movie Sanctum, but that movie offended me because it shows mercy killing. Give me a break. Nobody does that. And they show cavers killing somebody because they're injured. Huh?
No.
That's not what we do. We go to great lengths and endanger ourselves to get them out. So there we were at ECAD at the Explorers Club annual dinner. And who should I spot across the room but James Cameron, the producer of that movie?
Yes.
I told Diana, I said, and I'd had a couple scotches. I said, Diana, I'm gonna go over there and I'm gonna confront him. That's what explorers do, Don't keep it to ourselves. I'm gonna go talk to him about his damn movie and mercy killings. And she calmed me down. She asked me not to make a scene, so I didn't. And I got another scotch instead.
Awesome. Thank
The
you.
story out of it.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, Bill, thank you very much. We saw your presentation in Montana, but this was even more spectacular a few years later. So,
And longer. They limit me up there.
yeah, yeah.
Hey, do you guys know what I do as a retirement gig? I speak on cruise ships.
Oh, well, we're
Yeah,
going-
I just got back a week and a half ago from a cruise that went from Rome, Italy to Tampa, Florida. I got to cross the Atlantic, and we crossed the Atlantic almost exactly where Columbus did on his first voyage of 1492. That was really cool. And I kept pretending I was Columbus, saying, man, I'm not so sure I'm right about this. I'm not gonna fall off the edge over there.
Well, we're going on another cruise in January.
Oh, yeah, where?
New Zealand again. So
Oh, where do you start? Sydney?
this one starts in Auckland.
Oh,
New
cool.
Zealand.
Let me tell you a name of a caver to find in Auckland.
Oh,
Yeah, Phil Round. Phil Round. He's the Dave Bennell of New Zealand. He's the top photographer in New Zealand. He's an old bachelor with a Tesla, and he's a hoot. He's fun, and I stayed 3 or 4 days with him after that International Congress in Sydney a few years ago. Phil Round. Send me an email and I'll do an email introduction for you.
okay.
Okay.
Great. Well, only
Yeah, he's a good guy to meet, and then he'll kind of open the door for you if you want to meet other cavers on the North Island.
Well, we can only stay for a couple of days in Auckland because that's where our cruise begins, and we have to go to a family get together too.
You got family there?
Yeah, that's where my family sort of originated. So we're going back
really
to
cool.
family again.
Yep.
Oh, that's great. What a fun place. I love that place.
Oh yeah, I do too. I don't mind going there again and again.
Well, I know. You know, they drive on the wrong side of the road though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's fun.
They don't like you to say that. They call it the other side.
Well, my cousin lended me a car,
Loaned you.
loaned me a car, sat in the passenger seat for an around the block trip to make sure I could stay on the correct side of the road. And then he loaned me the car for a week. So,
Yeah, I rented one there. It's a lot easier to drive in New Zealand than it is in the UK, you know, because they got shoulders and wider roads.
Yeah.
yeah.
You just have to watch Alan when he makes a right-hand turn.
I know. It takes concentration.
Yeah.
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 Hey, it's nice to be with you guys. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
being
much.
asked.
Sorry about that. There any other questions? Going once?
Yeah.
Bill.
Hey, Mr. Bill. I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, I was sorry. I got interrupted right there at the end when you were showing the whole map of everything, of all the different entrances. Now, I was just a little confused by how you were talking about this group and this group were going to this cave, that cave. Or all of those pretty much tied into that one system that you were talking about?
Yeah, Sistema Watla has 30 entrances now. So can you see that?
What am I?
Or no? Oh, wait, I guess I stopped. Did I stop sharing?
No, you're still sharing.
You're still
Yeah,
there.
Okay, on the left is the plan view. Can you see it?
Yeah, barely.
Okay.
I'm trying to
So-
look at a phone. It's small.
So the 30 entrances are all pretty much in this area.
Oh, wow.
I'm circling. Can you see that with the cursor?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And then these passages are very deep, you know, well over 600 meters deep. Actually, no, this is an entrance. This is the Glacier entrance. This is the San Agustin entrance. Then they come together. Then of the 30 entrances, about 20 of them are in this area I'm circling right here. So we've pieced together a system. Originally, see, it was Sotono de San Agustin, which back in the 60s became the deepest cave in the Western Hemisphere. And then in 1980, we made a connection between Linita, which means flashlight cave, and Mazateco. We explored that on one expedition to be over 1,000 meters deep. It was the first cave outside of Europe to be 1,000 meters deep. And then with a scuba dive that Bill Stone and Jim Smith did together with little 15 cubic foot pony tanks, they went through a sump and came up into San Agustin. So that night in an underground camp, we decided on a name for the system, and we named it Sistema Watla. And at that time, there were 3 entrances to Sistema Watla. Now there's 30. So we've just been linking things together. And I think I'll just go ahead and predict that after this next April, we'll probably be up to 33, 34 entrances. I think there's probably 200 kilometers of cave here. So I'm not gonna be around to see it all, but we've put a dent in it.
Cool. Thank you.
Wow, that's extraordinary. What other questions do we have for Mr. Steele?
Hey, Bill, do you have the recipes for what you're eating in the underground camps?
Yeah,
Or a
I
rough
can send them
idea
to you.
anyways?
There, we got 3. We got, let me think about it. Well, if you got vegetarians or vegans, you know, you could say there's 5, but it just, the bulk of it, the main part is really the recipes. And then you can supplement it with jerky or, you know, whatever else you might want to add to it. But there's 2 breakfasts and 1 dinner. Now this year I'm trying to get a generous donation of freeze-dried food. And the reason is because people got tired of the same old thing. And it'd just be good to have a quantity of freeze-dried food for quick meals, you know. But our recipes, which I will send you, who was that, Andy, or who asked me that?
It was me, Chris Whitlaw.
Chris. Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind, send me an email. I'm easy to find. And remind me,
Yeah, I
Chris,
will.
and I'll send you the recipes. But and I'll explain what the numbers mean with it. You know, it's parts. Like if it says well, you'll see. I'll explain it when I send it to you. But there's a caver that's active over in Chevy named Sean Lewis. And Sean, I think, lives in Blacksburg now. He was in Texas for a long time. He's active at Chevy. He's active at Fisher Ridge in Kentucky. And he did the research and talked to some nutritionists and so forth, and came up with these recipes. They really ought to be published. He ought to publish it since he did the research, but really it ought to be out there for cavers because it's really good. But I'll send them to you.
Sounds good. Thanks.
More questions? Going once?
Yeah. Hey, Bill. I'm somebody who hasn't stepped foot in a cave at all yet, and I was just wondering, with all your years of experience, do you have any tips for brand new cavers?
Oh, sure. Go caving all you can, buy the gear. And just know that there's no end to buying gear, because there's stuff I still want. I've been caving since I was 13 years old. And I like all caves, no matter how long they are. And I've actually done a lot of caving in tag, and still do. You're in a great place to go caving a lot. Any wild cave, you know, like a show cave that's got wild caving trips, sometimes they're kind of pricey, but that's a good way to get going. And they got the gear to loan you, because you know, you gotta it's a geared endeavor. You gotta buy gear. I bought another light today, you know. There's no end to it. But just go caving as often as you can, and you're in a wonderful place to do that there with tag right there. Yeah, go caving a lot. Buy your vertical gear. Go pit caving a lot. Just go often. If you really want to dive into it, then just keep going. Go a lot.
Thank you.
Bill, have you got a favorite tag cave?
Well, Ellison's is always going to be near and dear to my heart, because I was in on it in the early days. A fabulous cave. Nunley Mountain Cave is fantastic. It's in Tennessee, and the NSS has now entered an agreement with them. It's a preserve of some kind. That's an incredible cave. I took several trips there and went way back into it. I think it's 15, 16 miles long. Fantastic. Mammoth is always going to be important in my life, because I started going there when I was 18 or 19 years old, and very good friends with all those guys that are regulars there. And I'm going between Christmas and New Year's this year. I just love touching base there and adding to the longest cave in the world. I love all the, you know, Mystery Hole. Too bad it's not open right now, but that's one of my favorite pits in my life, is Mystery up on Lookout Mountain above Chattanooga. I think it'll probably be open again eventually. SCCI is probably going to get access to it eventually. There's just so many in tag. You guys are lucky to be living where you are.
More questions? Going once? Going twice?
I have a question.
Go for it.
So I've recently become sort of interested in getting involved in expedition caving. So what's a good way to get started in, I guess, moving towards that?
Yeah. Well, here's how it works with us. And every project's different. But with us, what we tell people, and for example, I usually give a presentation at an NSS convention. I like doing that. That's my family, you know. I've been an NSS member since right after I turned 16 years old. So I've been around, and I give presentations at conventions. And always after I give a presentation in the international session at a convention, somebody comes up to me and says, God, I'd like to go there. How do I get to go there? So we're equitable about that. We tell everybody the same thing. It just keeps it simple. And that is, send me, as a co-leader of this project, an email at the 1st of August. The 1st of August. Now, we've had 7 PESH expeditions beginning in 20. When was the first one? Whenever that was. The COVID's messing up my thinking here. It was in 2014. That was our first one. And we've kind of developed this practice since then for me to get an email from somebody, I'm interested in going with you guys at the 1st of August. Now, what I've noticed is really interesting. If 10 people ask me about coming on the next expedition and I tell them all the same thing, I don't hear from 10 people after the 1st of August. I end up hearing from about 4, maybe 3 that are really serious, you know, when they see a slideshow, oh, I want to go there. But then, you know, life gets in the way. So I don't hear back from them. So what we do is we decide on who we can fit into an expedition pretty much by the end of August. And then we begin to communicate with who we can get in. Now, if you think about it, if we've done 7 PESH expeditions, we're, you know, we've had a lot of people come on them, and a lot of people want to come back. So we don't have that many openings. We fill up pretty fast on ours, but there's other places in Mexico. You know, over Thanksgiving, there was a lot of caving that went on. I didn't go because I was on a cruise ship in the Atlantic Ocean, but there's a whole bunch of caving in Mexico. So getting to know Mexico and going down there and understanding that it's a different country, and you know, there's do's and don'ts down there. So getting used to Mexico is something. Oaxaca, where Huatla is deep as darkest, farthest down there, Mexico. So it's, you know, way down there. So some people are a bit overwhelmed with being outside the United States. They never have before. But we always have somebody on an expedition that's never been outside the United States. So we fit in who we can, but we got to hear from them in early August. And then I'll tell people too that, you know, we're full, but and an example is, oh, what's his name? He's over in Ukraine right now, from TAG. He's over there doing humanitarian work. I'm trying to think of his name.
Paige Ashwell.
Lives in
Paige Ashwell.
what?
Paige Ashwell.
Yeah, Paige. I know. He was
Ashwell.
coming back from Mexico, I think, when we were going this year. We're going to Huatla. And he came to our send-off party and he said, God, I'd like to turn around and go back with you guys. And I said, man, we're full. But let's see, I'll let you know if anybody doesn't show up. And then somebody didn't show up, so he came and he was on the expedition. So, you know, if there's flexibility and come after, you know, money's due and people back out, then, you know, we can squeeze people in. But, you know, there's a whole bunch of different projects going on in Mexico. So going down there and experiencing Mexico and finding out, you know, what it's like to get around. And if you don't know any Spanish, you know, getting by with English Spanish book in your hand and That's how I started out. My first trip to Mexico was in 1970, I think, and I went to Golondrinas with Marion Smith and others, and I've been going ever since, for 50 years. But if you're a vertical caver and you've caved a lot vertically in tag, you got a upper hand on a lot of people, because think about it. What if they live in Ohio or somewhere where they can't get the experience under their belt like you guys can? And we always have a whole bunch of people from tag on PESH expeditions because they know what they're doing. They know how to do vertical caves, and they know how to do wet, gnarly caves, I call them.
Other questions? Going once, going twice. Once again, Bill Steele, thank you so much for coming, for attending our meeting and delivering that program. It's just extraordinary, good stuff. And there's a number of people on this call who are new to the grotto, and I've got to say they hit the jackpot tonight. So thank you very much.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Thanks,
I
Bill.
like talking about it, obviously.
Thank you, Bill.
I put a lot of my life into this.
Awesome. We appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, guys.
Bye.
I'm out of here.
Take care, Bill. Have a good night.
You too. Thank
Thank you, Bill. I am your fan number one.
Oh,
Monse, you were there.
Yes.
Monse is from Huautla.
Yeah, I really appreciate your talking, Bill. It was amazing. I remember everything that we were living there, and it's awesome. Thank you, Bill.
Monse, how did you learn English?
Because I met cavers and I want to be a caver. That's why.
Yeah, she's great.
Thank
She's
you,
important
amigo.
to the project. Extremely important to us. All right, bye, you guys.
Y'all have a good night. See you guys.
Bye.
All right. So the man has left the call. Bill Steele, I can't believe it. Mickey, I can't thank you enough. What an extraordinary catch there.